Hello everybody, and welcome to Sherlock Club, where I go over a different adaptation each week within a monthly theme. This week is our fifth and final week of Old-Fashioned Film Month, concluding our theme. Now, I'd like to get right into it, so I'm going to start with our intro question of the day. What was Holmes really doing during the Great Hiatus? Everyone has made theories about this. Holmes obviously answered that he's just doing random stuff, and I don't think Watson was very comforted by that. But honestly, I think that as a detective and a man of culture, he was probably immersing himself in different places from the east to the west. Maybe he took a journey around the world in 80 days. I don't know. Probably took a little longer, considering he didn't get back for 3 years. I'm not mad at him. Our diva of the week this week is Violet Smith. Now, if you don't know her, she's from The Solitary Cyclist. Now, she's just a music teacher, which isn't really just. I think that is a wonderful profession, but there wasn't really any evidence to show she was doing anything nefarious, because she wasn't. She was just, regular girl. But after everything that she had to go through, I mean, a man following you on a bicycle, it's kind of sketchy, and someone kidnapping you and putting you into a fake marriage, that's awful. But she's still able to maintain a positive disposition, and she was definitely very helpful in her case. Shouting her out is the right choice. On to our adaptation of the week. Sherlock Holmes from 1921 to 1923. It is a series of films, and they all star Eddie Norwood, which is that guy up there. Now, first of all, I'd like to go on a bit of a tangent. Stay with me now. Arthur Conan Doyle had a brother-in-law. I know, that's crazy. But his name was E.W. Hornung, and he wrote a bunch of books about a criminal version of Sherlock Holmes. Stay with me now. His name was Arthur J. Raffles, and his companion, Bunny Manders, was also a biographer, just like maybe John Watson. Anyway, the two were inspired by each other often and basically wrote around each other because they were pals, and I wanted to drop that because I think it's interesting. I also wanted to drop that because A. Norwood's career started on the stage, and he at one point played Arthur J. Raffles. And I think that's very interesting. I will probably go over Raffles or start a different series about him altogether, because I just find that story so interesting, and I really enjoy it. And so I wanted to drop that here because even before the films and even before everything, he still knew how to play a charming, intelligent person. And that really, I think, led him to Sherlock Holmes, which I think was kind of crazy because he started his career in the 1880s when he was in his 20s. He got sick and couldn't perform for a while, and then he went right back at it. 1921 is almost 40 years after that. And so he started playing Sherlock Holmes older than a lot of other people. 60 years old. Kind of reminds me of my good friend and pal, Arthur Wantner. Maybe you've heard of him before. Even though he started kind of late, he still starred in so many Sherlock Holmes films. They were shorter. There were quite a lot of them, and they adapted many of the stories. Actually, it wasn't until very recently where someone broke his record of the most amount of times playing Sherlock Holmes on film. Now, sure, that doesn't quite beat William Gillette or anything, but I still think it's very interesting, especially because they are silent films. After that, he starred in 2 feature-length films, which are, of course, The Hound of the Baskervilles and The Sign of the Four. I wanted to go over The Hound of the Baskervilles because I find the reception more interesting. Obviously, the film itself, which I'll later go on about, is very important and very well done. But I wanted to talk about the reaction because, in case you didn't see from my title slide, A. Norwood is hanging out with, you guessed it, Arthur Conan Doyle. And Doyle was praising that series. He really adored Norwood as Holmes, and said that it was really wonderful and amazing, which, I mean, if you're the author and you're talking about that, especially after the 30, almost 40 years of Sherlock Holmes being around, I think that it is really a testament to his character and to his acting skills. Now, I wanted to go on another bit of a tangent, I know, but I wanted to talk about silent films because there are so few of them, and yet they're very important. They establish the way that we film scenes and the way that we direct, and really the transition from the stage to the screen, especially with silent films, because you can't use your voice as a reaction. You have to show it in your facial expressions, and you have to use the words that you have on your subtitles very carefully. You have to use them sparingly enough so that people know what you're talking about, but it doesn't overwhelm the film. And I feel like silent films really influence the way that we consumed media as well, especially after we got over the initial idea of retiring films when they're done and decided to keep a lot of them. I find that to be really a testament to the way that life was back then, and even though it's been 100 years, a century, it's longer than a lot of turtles, I still find it really beautiful that we are able to preserve so much of our culture from that. Obviously, A. Norwood is probably not the most well-known. In fact, a lot of people say that his films are not as good as Rathbone and Bruce, and that's kind of true. Like, it doesn't come close in the same way, but it has its idiosyncrasies and specialities that I find really wonderful and that a lot of people enjoy. It's entertaining, and it has a bit of insight now as to how we made movies back in the day. My beautiful creative prompt to you is, if you were an author, who would you like to play your star character? And if you're an actor, which author would you be most willing to take a character of? For example, if I were an author, I would want a person that nobody has ever heard of before to be my star character, because then people aren't judging based on the name, based on the way of acting, but rather the person and the way that they bring a spin to my character. And if I were an actor, I would love to do an adaptation of anything from Dracula to Dorian Gray to Jeeves and Wooster, or freaking Raffles again, but I want to take that and add things that are more accurate to the books, but also really make those characters human. Because you'll see in a lot of adaptations, especially for popular literature, that they take all of the things that are stereotypical to pop culture and add them. Like, if you saw the Frankenstein movie that came out recently, it was less about the story of Frankenstein as written by Mary Shelley and more about really that myth, the creation myth that we have built since classic Universal monsters and everything else that has happened in the film world. We build off of films and Frankenstein them together. So I would really try to keep some of the things close to the book, but also be able to use those characters and make them, kind of like people. Which is why I would probably want to star in a classic literature adaptation. Now, my homework for you. I'm going to say watch it, but you don't really have to if you don't want to. I'd say take a look, and I also want you to start thinking about Arthur J. Raffles and Harry Bunny Manders, because they are both very interesting characters, and their stories are really wonderful. It really shows the difference between Hornung and Doyle in the way of their writing, and I think it also shows the kind of relationship that someone is willing to portray, especially in literature in that time, because you'll see how reserved the detective and the upstanding army man doctor are. And then you'll look at this whimsical little biographer and this charming gentleman thief, and because they are less bound by the strictures of society, they are able to be more free with each other, and they really have a different outlook on the male friendship and relationships that these two pairs portray. I think it's really wonderful. So I want you to start thinking about it. You don't have to read anything, you don't have to watch anything, but if you do watch something, watch the 1977 TV series with Anthony Valentine and Christopher Straley. It's the only way. That is all for today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and cheers to 5. That's kind of crazy that I've stuck with it for this long. I think that it's really awesome to be able to express my fascination and my little bit of obsession with Sherlock Holmes on the internet. So that's all. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next week.